Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here. My name is Alex Young, and I am so excited to be here on behalf of Leadership Delta, sharing about how we cultivate tenacity and how we really build resilience in leadership. In challenging times, it's really important that we have a high capacity for resiliency. And I think we're seeing that so much in these days where everything is changing, it seems, by the minute or by the hour. And we are feeling stressed and overwhelmed. And we're seeing that in our teams, our families, our communities, as well as ourselves. And so today I'm hoping to take just a little bit of your time to give you some strategies for building your resilience in yourself and in your teams, and how we can really focus on recharging ourselves so that we are able to keep going in those challenging times. As we get started, I want to share with you that this is modeled after our Delta Academy forums. So our forums are focused on personal leadership and team leadership. And we meet either twice a month or once a month, depending on which topic that you are joining us for. And we cover a variety of different topics. And so this webinar is modeled after that, minus the group coaching and the interactive conversations in small groups. But we wanted to give you a feel for what those forums really look like. So today we're going to check in. We're going to do a little bit about resilience and leadership. We're going to cover the concept of surge capacity and recharging, and then we'll send you on your way. So it's short and sweet, but a way to learn a little bit about what you can do every day to help build your resilience. So as we get started, we always like to do a check-in, and I want you to take a few moments here and just think about what is your greatest challenge that you are facing today. It's going to be different for everyone, but one of the important things that we do is we stop to reflect and think about what is it about today that is my biggest challenge. So take about 30 seconds here to think on that. Because as we go through our conversation today, I want you to think about that challenge and how you can apply some of the strategies that we're going to talk about to the challenge that you are currently facing. Now let's dive into it. So resilience. Now resilience is one of those topics that comes up a lot, especially in a challenging year as 2020. But I want you to think, what does resilience mean to you? When you hear that word resilience, what comes to mind? Sometimes it might be a characteristic. It might be that specific challenge. It could be a whole host of things. And so I want you to think about resilience in this way. Resilience is a fundamental leadership skill. It is something that every leader must have, and it is not a fixed state. It is something that you can grow and develop and increase your capacity for resiliency. When we look at a basic definition for resilience, we see that it is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, that toughness. And maybe toughness is what came to mind when you were thinking about what resilience is. But it's that ability to really overcome challenges of all kinds, whether it's trauma or tragedy. Maybe you have a personal life crisis, or just some of those bigger life problems like financial stability or work stress or relationship stress. All of those things can contribute to a challenge, right? And resilience is that ability to bounce back stronger and wiser and really more powerful than you were from the beginning. One of the things I mentioned that I want you to really think about and to take with you today is that resiliency is not a fixed state. It is a capacity, it is a skill that can be developed. Now, challenges become those opportunities to really grow and to learn from each one of those. And that really comes down to having a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset. Carol Dweck is one of the top people to learn about growth mindset from. And when you think about your failures or those challenges as just temporary setbacks and that you're able to overcome them. That's where having that growth mindset and resilience really come together. So thinking about it, that really any type of criticism or feedback that might feel like a failure is more of a guide to help you grow, and that these are problems might just simply be opportunities to grow. Now, one of the things that we want to talk about is the differences between grit and resilience. Both of these, I think, are kind of those key words that we hear about what we want people to have. We want people to be full of grit or gritty. We want people to be resilient. But what exactly do those mean? And so I wanted to point out that one way to think about this is that grit is the engine that moves us towards our goal, while resilience is the oil that keeps that engine moving. So Angela Duckworth is one of the experts on grit, and she has the definition that grit is the tendency to sustain interest in an effort around very long-term goals. So it's that sustained effort. To be able to be gritty is to be having that consistent effort towards those long-term goals. So when we think about it as the engine, right? That engine that's moving us towards our goal. While resilience is that ability to bounce back when you have a setback or failure, that able to pick yourself up and keep going when it's tough. So really the oil that keeps that engine moving. You need to have both in order to reach your goals. So grit is that sustained effort, and resilience is that being able to really bounce back when you're struggling or you're faltering. The thing I love about resilience is that it has that key piece of optimism. You have to believe, right, that it's going to get better. Otherwise you fall and you don't get back up. Resiliency has that optimism, that light, that focus on the end goal, and sees that it is going to get better, and you keep going. So resilience and grit are both skills that we can develop as we keep going. And what's critical to both of those is having a growth mindset in yourself and in others. When we have our teams and we focus on building resilient teams, it's important to know that, like, when our team maybe has that failure or they're struggling, that's not permanent. That's not who those people are, that they're able to overcome that. And we as leaders can have that growth mindset towards them to say, yes, this isn't who you are. You are resilient. You can pick yourself back up. You can keep going, and to really cheer them on that way. I love this quote. Our greatest glory is not in never failing, never falling, but in rising every time that we fall. We know we're going to fall. We know we're going to struggle, that we're going to stumble along the way, but we need to rise up every time that we fall. And that is what resilience is. So let's talk a little bit about what leading with resilience looks like. When you think about resilient leaders that you know or that you work with, what are the characteristics that come to mind when you think about those people? Yeah, so some of the things that come to mind might be that they're tough, right? That they make decisions, that they are able to think on their feet, that they don't take things personally. That's one we hear a lot, right? That leading with resilience is someone who maybe doesn't take things personally, that they're able to take the information for what it is and move on and move forward. So when we recognize maybe in our teams or ourselves that we're starting to take things more personal, or it's taking us a little bit longer to get dust ourselves off and to get picked back up, that's when we know that we need to build our resilient skills, that we need to build that capacity up more so we can handle more challenges, that we can be able to keep going. We need more oil in our engine, right? So we look to leaders to model the way when they are leading their teams or out there, that we want to see resilient leaders. I want to share a story with you here to sort of help bring this point home. Now, it's a little quick story. about what resilience might look like in different people, or what a challenge might do for different people. A young woman went to her mother and told her that her life was very hard right now and things were so hard and she just didn't know how she was going to make it and she wanted to give up. She was tired of that fight and the struggle, and it seemed that every time a problem was solved, a new one showed up. Her mother took her into the kitchen and she filled 3 pots of water and put them on the stove and set them to boil. In the first, she placed some carrots. In the second, she placed eggs, and in the third, she put some coffee beans. The mother let the pots boil for about 20 minutes and didn't say a word. After the 20 minutes, she turned off the burners and brought the pots over to the table. She pulled out the carrots and placed them in a bowl, took out the eggs and put them in another bowl, and then ladled the coffee out and put that in another bowl. She turned to her daughter and said, "Now tell me, what do you see?" And the daughter replied, "Well, I see carrots, eggs, and coffee." Her mom brought her closer and said, "Well, look a little closer. Feel the carrots." And the daughter did, and she noticed that they had turned soft. The mother asked her to look and do the same for the eggs, and the daughter said that after pulling off the shell, she realized the egg had turned into a hard-boiled egg. And finally, her mother asked the daughter to sip the coffee. And the daughter smiled as she tasted its rich aroma, and she said, "What does it mean, Mom?" The mother explained that each of these objects had faced the same adversity, the boiling water, yet each of them had reacted differently. The carrot went in strong, hard, and unrelenting. But after being subjected to the boiling water, it became soft and weak. The egg had been fragile, had a thin outer shell to protect its liquid inside, but after sitting in the boiling water, it too became hardened. The ground coffee beans, though, were unique, and they were in the boiling water, and they changed the boiling water. "Which are you?" the mother asked her daughter. "When adversity knocks on your door, how do you respond? Are you a carrot? Are you an egg? Or are you a coffee bean?" Now, I love stories like this because they really illustrate that everyone can deal differently with those adversities. And whether they go into that challenge and they become weak like the carrot, or they become hard like the egg, or maybe they take advantage of that challenge and they change the water like the coffee beans. Everyone reacts differently. And so when we look at resilience and seeing how it shows up in leaders, it can show up very differently for different people. And sometimes you might want to be the carrot or the egg or the coffee bean, depending on the situation. But more often than not, we want to have that resilience so that we can take control of the situation and change the water, just like the coffee bean. So let's talk about building resilience. How exactly do we do this? Well, like I said earlier, it is a capacity thing. It is a skill that we can develop. It is not a fixed state. And so we have to believe that we can change, that we can grow our resilience, that we can use that growth mindset and that pattern of thinking to really be able to grow as humans. So I want you to think for a second about how do you do this in your teams or with yourself? Have you ever stopped to reflect and think about how do you become more resilient? A lot of times it's through experience, where we experience one thing and then the next time we know more. But there are things we can do to prepare so that we are prepared when those challenges come to be more resilient. So I'm going to give you 5 strategies that we can do to really build our resilience. So the first one is connecting with others. Having a support system or people around you, a network that you can trust and you can lean on when you are facing those tough times is so important. And leaders who are resilient have that built-in system. They have people that they can go to, that they can turn to and connect with when they need help. So connecting with others is crucial. And oftentimes when we are in a virtual world, It might be a little bit harder to reach out to people and to connect with each other. But I want to challenge you to really put this on your schedule. Put a reminder in your phone, do something, send yourself an email so that you remind yourself that you have a network outside of what you normally see in your day to day. It's important that we stay connected to others as we build our resiliency. The second strategy I have for you is to really control your response. This is oftentimes a hard thing to learn, right? We learn to either react or respond to a situation. And leaders who have higher levels of resiliency are able to control their response. They are responding. And maybe that means you need to stop and think about those events as you're experiencing them before responding. But when you react, that's oftentimes when we don't see as much resilience. The third piece, this one hurts, right? Get used to change. Human beings as a whole, sometimes we just don't love change, but it is the most common thing that we have here. And so we need to get used to it, right? It's a constant in our life. And the more we can get used to change, the more we can remain flexible, the more that we can adapt when things are changing rapidly, the more resilient we're going to become. And so the more used to it we can get now, the more we'll be able to really handle that change when it's thrown at us. We'll allow that grit to step back in, right? We'll have enough oil in the engine so that we can have that sustained effort, even when the changes are rapidly coming. So the inability to accept change really is one thing that is going to cause you to feel like you can't pick yourself back up, that it's overwhelming. So we really want to be able to get used to that change. My fourth strategy for you is to apply this principle to your goals. Now, this is a new principle. It comes from a Japanese management philosophy where K means continuous and Zen means improvement. So when you put it together, the K-Zen principle really means continuous improvement. So when we think about this, as we apply that to our goals, it's about small steps, right? It's about taking those smaller steps to achieve a long-term, bigger goal. The more that we can do that, the more that we can apply this to say, okay, what are the continuous improvements that we can do? Those simple steps. That's going to chalk up wins for us, for our team, and allow us to keep going. We're going to build win upon win upon win by taking those small steps. There's this great poem by Shel Silverstein that I love, and it is, I'm going to forget her name, but it's about the woman who ate a whale. So Shel Silverstein does these silly poems, and the one about the whale I actually kept in my office for a long time. And Melinda May, that's her name. And Melinda May sits down and says, I am going to eat a whale. And everyone laughed at her. And they're like, no way, there's no way you can. And she did. One bite at a time, she ate an entire whale. It took her till she was like 89 years old, but she was determined. And she applied the same principle of continuous improvement, of small steps, one bite at a time, to eat that whale or to handle the challenge or your goal in front of you. And the fifth strategy I want to share with you today is to be decisive. This is hard. This is really hard when there are so many things weighing on your mind, and sometimes it feels like there's no solutions or no good solutions forward. But when we can commit to our decisions, when you are in a tough situation, that is going to allow us to be more decisive in our actions and not wishy-washy. And wishy-washy is when we lose that resilience because we're waffling back and forth, right? And we're not able to have that commitment. So we want to be decisive. It doesn't mean that we're not allowed to change our minds when we are presented with new information, but we do need to be able to be decisive and to move forward with the decisions that we make. I often find that when I am struggling with making a decision, that is when I feel the most sort of out to sea, that I'm just tossed upon the waves and feeling like I'm not going to be able to dust myself up. But as soon as I make that decision and I commit to it, it's a whole new game. It's a whole new day. I feel better about it. And so the more decisive we can be, the better. Now, I actually have 5 more strategies, but I'm not going to share them with you today. We should talk about them here in our Delta Academy forums. And I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk to you about these forums before we wrap up in talking about surge capacity and our ability to recharge, which is crucial to resilience. Now, Delta Academy is our leadership development programs. They start in January, and we actually have two different programs, personal leadership and team leadership. And you can see right here under personal leadership, we're talking about building resiliency and leadership. It's a key skill that we can develop. And so as we've modeled this webinar after one of our sessions, we wanted to just talk about the key pieces that we do with Delta Academy. The first is our curriculum. You can see here on your screen what are the topics that we cover. It's a wide variety, but all are really integral to developing your leadership skills. Now, the curriculum we have is top-notch. It's been tested over and over again, and we have just the best testimonies of people coming into our programs and saying, I am learning so much, and I'm taking it and applying it right away to work. And that is what we love, is when someone comes into our program and they're learning not only about for themselves, but they are turning around and applying it to their teams and sharing them with others, because that helps us build better leaders everywhere. So curriculum is number one. The second piece is coaching. Our Delta Academy forums have a really unique setup in that it involves group coaching. Group coaching is a fabulous way to be able to grow while learning from other perspectives. It also allows us to problem solve as a group, to run situations or scenarios by people, but also to learn from people who have gone through this before or maybe had a similar situation. It allows us to learn more about ourselves, and it just is a really neat way to develop yourself as a leader, because you really do focus on listening as well and to grow your empathy towards other people. So group coaching is a key piece of our Delta Academy forums. And the third piece is community. And man, don't we need community more than ever these days. So with our forums, we have a smaller group. It's about 15 people that gather together for each forum. And it's networking, it's that social piece, it's meeting new people. A lot of things we're not getting right now is a lot of people have transitioned to working from home or are working remotely with their teams. And so this community aspect of meeting new people, having that ability to network and to join in with people in a common endeavor is really key. So Delta Academy, like I said, has personal leadership and team leadership. Both have forums starting in January. I would love to share more information with you if you are interested. You can just email me at alex@leadershipdelta.com, and we can chat a little bit more about what that looks like for you. Now, our last topic before we get you on the road again today is surge capacity. Now, surge capacity is really the ability to adapt mentally and physically when you have short-term stressful situations. Your capacity really surges when you're faced with those acute needs. Now, this happens a lot with natural disasters. But right now, when we're talking about being in a long-term pandemic where we don't necessarily have that end and it's stretching out indefinitely, that's where the surge capacity, we're seeing that people are really getting tapped. And you're probably seeing this on your teams too, that the people that you work with are starting to feel overwhelmed or that they've hit their max on their surge capacity. So what happens is when it's depleted, we need to be able to recharge it. We need to renew ourselves so that we can keep going. We need to fill up the oil in our engine and figure out where we're going to get a refill on that oil. So when we see extreme signs of burnout or stress or overwhelm, we need to really clue into what is going on with ourselves that is able to recharge. Like, what do we need? What do you need? So it's really just sitting down. I want you to do this if you're watching right now. Write down, what are the ways that you personally recharge? It's going to look different for everyone, but what do you need when you are feeling stressed and overwhelmed and moving towards burnout? Do you need fresh air? Do you need a good workout? Do you need to watch what you're eating a little bit better so that you're fueling your body and your mind? Do you need extra self-care? Do you need to be around people? Do you need to be alone? What recharges you so that you feel that you are able to keep going? There is a direct correlation, according to research, between the lack of recovery and the increase in health and safety problems. And so when we look at what our health is like and what our wellness is like, when we are not able to recover and have those times to recharge, that's when our health starts to suffer. And we start to see safety issues pop up too for work. So just because work stops doesn't mean we're recharging. So we often see people overworking or workaholism. So things when you think about, like, what are we celebrating on our team? Are we celebrating people when they pull all-nighters? I hope not. That's not resilient, right? We need to recharge. So we need to figure out what are those good habits for us that we can develop to help us fill our cups, help us refill the oil in our engine of resilience, fill that capacity back up so we can keep going. The surge capacity is one thing when there are acute situations, but when we're in a long-term stressful situation, we need to periodically check in with ourselves and know what we need so that we can keep going. And recharging is a really critical piece to building your resilience capacity. Okay. As we wrap up here, I just want to leave you with a few key takeaways here. One, I want you to take a moment and reflect on what your current resilience level is. How are you feeling? When you think about that greatest challenge from our check-in that you are facing today, are you at max capacity for resilience? Or do you have some room there that you can keep going? You need to know where you're at. It's kind of like checking your oil on your car. What level is it? What level are you at? And then I want you to think, is that the challenge? Where challenge in your life are you wanting to build resilience around? And really focus on maybe just one. How are you going to build resilience on this certain issue? And then the key last piece is thinking about, how do you recharge? You maybe wrote down some ideas on the slide before. Now I want you to schedule time into your day this week to recharge. Make it a priority in your schedule. We need to make building resilience a priority for us, in ourselves, our teams, our families, our communities, so that we can keep going. It's a critical skill for leaders. And I know that you can be tenacious as well. And so we have to cultivate that as we keep going. This last quote I want to leave you with is that resilience is the capacity to believe that the future could be good again. That even in the face of darkness and fear, it is the capacity to choose future purpose over current pain. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Leadership Delta. Again, my email is alex@leadershipdelta.com, and I would love to chat with you more about resilience, or if you're interested in more information about our Delta Academy programs, let's set up a time to connect and chat. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day, and I will see you hopefully again soon.